Welcome friends to this brief presentation which is brought to you to provide absolute clarity on the current affairs of the world with focus on the corona pandemic. Dr. Sathesh Vikramadityan, MD physiologist and a research scientist associated with the Global Union of Scientists for Peace, Iowa, USA, and who has been blessed by His Holiness Maharishi Mahesh Yogi is here to reveal a holistic holographic reality of the corona pandemic, so that we understand our responsibility and help ourselves transcend from this critical looking times to a more peaceful and stable world.
In the Holy Quran, the following is clearly stated, "And with him are the keys of the unseen, none knows them except him. And he knows what is on the land and in the sea. Not a leaf falls but that he knows it. And no grain is there within the darknesses of the earth, and no moist or dry thing, but that it is written in a clear record. Nobody can speak and have it happen unless the Lord commands it. Both bad and good things come by the command of the Most High God. No one should complain when he is punished for his sins. Let us examine and see what we have done and then return to the Lord."
Hello friends, it's a pleasure actually to share some wonderful insights into what's happening now. Similar to your feelings, everyone has gone through this phase with first an unbelievable shock, and then the rapidity with which people have accepted this pandemic and also the consequences of it in terms of a lockdown that we have never ever heard so far is really taking us to a new chapter in the world history. So here we have the truth, as always, stranger than fiction. So let's gradually explore what has gone as an pandemic and how it should be viewed in the context of the knowledge that we are now having. Wonderful story where this saint, lady saint, was martyred by Roman kingdom before they embraced Christianity. And what we see is that this lady was hung in a bent over palms, and the palms were then later released, making her tear apart. And this was the consciousness that has happened. We really have to see whether it is an allegorical tale like most of the mythology, and if so, one of the wonderful references in the internet is Marty Leeds. Marty Leeds has a great insight into the world in terms of gematria, and he says that the meaning of the entire world, with specifically the angle with which he views and with the perspective with which he has studied the Bible, is amazing. One has to see it. And here what he says is that the Saint Corona's important festival day is in the month of May 14th. And there has been a calendar shift which is clearly explained by Marty Leeds, and he says that the pi value of 3.14, that is, May comes as a third month if we start the year from March, April, May, and 14th of May is the Saint Corona Day. So we can expect the pandemic to reach its climax and thereby release the world from its grips on that festival day. Well, this is one of the interesting aspects that has come to light in these hard times. So this is for your information, the Saint Corona, the martyr, and how it associated with the pi value of 3.14, and the pi is the most significant number because it actually reveals the basic mathematical structure in which our world has been designed. You would understand that I'm not talking something statistical details that you find very much in the television and the mainstream media. We are here going to explain different phases like the multidimensional integration of world events for a meaningful insight into the current pandemic crisis, and thereby the corona is raising the world consciousness to a different level where the crown chakra, actually corona means crown, and crown in Sanskrit is Sahasrara chakra, which promotes the unification of the whole of the world. So we need to understand the different dimensions of the world. And from a scientific perspective, we all know the quantum cosmological theories and the unified field theories that has actually been understood of late, and how different layers of our understanding can be integrated into a meaningful whole so that we understand where we are standing. So astroscience is a great aspect of our lives, and we may have different understanding based on our experience, but the truth is getting more and more obvious in this age, which really is throwing a lot of surprises to us. So, in understanding the entire scenario, this one great scientist from US, he has been associated with Harvard, Professor Tony Nader, and popularly called now as Raja Nader Ram, he found out that human physiology is an expression of Veda and the Vedic literature. This book is a must read for all the open-minded scientists because the depth of this approach of understanding Vedas and Vedic literature from the perspective of human physiology is mind-blowing. So here, what Professor Nader has brought to light is that the Navagrahas have the absolute 1:1 correlation with the structures in basal ganglia of human brain, and also he has correlated the cellular level and then at the DNA level too, how the 27 constellations, how the Rashis and how the planets all are completely represented, or we can say it's not represented, it's reflected in different layers up to our closest reality, that's human body. So astroscience and human physiology is going to help us understand where we are in this corona pandemic. This is the graphical poster that actually says how each planet has been correlated with a specific part in the human basal ganglia. And remember, friends, this textbook is available for you to critically go through it and see the amazing truth revealed. And you will find that it is just not correlated by some random thought or some mere coincidence. No, it's purely science. It's purely scientific. And you will find that the ancient texts that reveal about the planets and the actual anatomical and physiological exploration into the basal ganglia and the different cellular aspects are unbelievably one and the same. Three planets are aligning celestially. That's a conjunction, and of that, the two, the Jupiter and the Saturn, their association is really known to cause certain changes, turmoils in the human societies. Now, an interesting aspect also I need to introduce you to is just seeing virus as not an alien species, but the bacteria and viruses, are dominating the cellular world. In fact, the virus and the bacteria are known to be making the bulk of the human cells. Like a few decades back, it was understood that more than 90% of the human cellular mass is made of bacteria. And now it has been roughly put at 60-40. 60% of our cellular bulk is of these bacterial cells, and of course it includes viruses. And so here it will be surprising to see that the virus is closely resembling the structure of certain sound vibrations. Now in the previous slides we saw that the human physiology itself is made of nothing but Veda and Vedic sounds. The sound impulses is a creative process, and that creates human physiology. And if that's the case with human physiology, it will be easily understood that virus could also be the expressions of certain erratic creation processes which is not causing the human cells. Those sounds could be expressing itself as bacteria and viruses. This is a hypothesis which is getting to us from a holistic angle. But you can see that here the top picture shows the capsid, viral capsids, and then the bottom picture is nothing but the sound vibrations making itself evident through cymatics, that is fine particles displayed over a plate which is put into certain frequencies, and these elaborate patterns arises. And you can see that in a two-plane structure it looks similar to the viral capsids. So just keeping this in mind, especially with the discovery of human physiology to be an expression of Veda and Vedic literature, this will help us to understand what's happening really. But just keep in mind, don't dismiss anything, have an open mind, and please listen to the unfolding story.
Welcome to the world of Chakras. Crown Chakra, also known as Sahasrara Chakra, mediates the experience of unity and the unselfish realization that everything in this world is connected or linked to everything at a fundamental level. The energy of the Crown Chakra allows you to experience mystical oneness with everything and everyone. Importantly, you will realize that there is no intellectual knowing at this Chakras level. There is direct peace, joy, and happiness without intellectual reasoning. This chakra gives you a sense of knowing that there is a bigger, dynamic and deeper meaning in life, and that there is an order that governs all of existence. No one is immune to that order, though it may seem to come from different levels in your environment. As per the current indications from around the world, it is certainly the time of awakening of the crown chakra, which is bombarding our consciousness as corona. In our materialistic perspective, we have given the status of corona as a virus. In the Gematria world, which forms the basis of the deeper dimensions of life, it is the pure energy of our crown chakra that is helping us realize the truth.
Well, this is a beautiful summary of the crown chakra. So, it's not a coincidence that this virus has been named as coronavirus long back, but you see, in the infinite plan of the divine, everything is for a reason. So, we know coronavirus has been associated with common cold, and I have always wondered as a doctor what the heck this common cold is creating in the world before corona itself, and then with corona unfolding and people not knowing what's happening. It's equal to cold, and it sometimes goes beyond and even shows an experience of death to many, and then it evolved into a major pandemic where the entire world has completely almost shut off for this corona. And is it something ordinary? It's not. So our relationship, we know that in the spiritual world everything is interconnected. Nothing is separate by itself. Everything in the divine plan has been established clearly with a purpose. So the conjunction, when we are going to see in terms of the Mars, Saturn and the Jupiter, we'll just see a few points what the planet Mars has been known to do. Mars is basically a Pitta enhancing planet, or planet means an influence, a vibration. Now, usually, men are from Mars, they tell. So, it's a fiery nature, it's related to blood, red color, and so hemoglobin comes into the picture. Now, you also can, see that Mars is always associated with arms, war. So, we find that a small anecdotal observation, Mars, you spell it M-A-R-S, and arms, just an interplay of these letters, M-A-R-S, you change it here and there and you come arms. So Mars is associated with war, that means arms and men. So very importantly, you see that it is the hemoglobin. Again, this also is stored in memory, and now we will correlate it very meaningfully in few slides from now. Saturn, the planet is of air. Again, very important for your noting. And Kapha nature also, absolutely beautiful. We are dealing with a pandemic which is closely related to common cold, which is Kapha related, and also people throughout the world are fearing that it spreads through air. So Saturn's effect here. So it gives unusual and incurable diseases. This planet causes diseases related to legs, nerve, the last part of the large intestine, which is associated with Vata in Ayurveda. So there is eerie coincidences in the knowledge that we have been having since eternity, and what is right before our eyes in terms of the corona pandemic. And also Ketu, that also gets aligned, and it's been told that it causes epidemics, fever, blisters, infectious disease, all this, related to our the corona pandemic. Now, Ayurveda and modern medicine. Now, first of all, when we are uniting everything in the universe, do you think there can be something different systems of medicine in the world? No, absolutely not. Only the language seems different. Even the language is not meaningfully different, but phonetically or the pronunciation is different. But we can know that the actual unity is never compromised in any creation of the divine. So, the Ayurveda, if you break it, the word Ayur and Veda, life, Veda means knowledge, Ayur means life. So, life knowledge is absolutely nothing but physiology in terms of modern medicine. And because humans learned the art of dealing with molecules more than the mind and the subtle things, the industrial age brought the molecular solutions in modern medicine, whereas Ayurveda, when it was gifted to mankind since eternity, it evolved in a holistic environment, and so it doesn't see only in the molecules the solution to any challenge. Ayurveda sees it in a very, very deep cellular, energetic levels, and so lifestyle, and then food, and then comes certain herbs which were provided by nature. And in every ancient text it's been given that God has provided us with everything that we require in the universe, and nothing needs to be created for solving any problem that we might make as such as humans. So a deep understanding of Ayurveda will help us combat any disease that may seem absolutely preposterous. So a deeper understanding of Ayurveda is nothing but a scientific exploration of human physiology with the complete understanding of the cosmic energies and cosmic patterns. This doctor, we are going to see in a few seconds, brought about a great revelation in terms of COVID-19 infection, and how his insight could help us link the knowledge that we have had so far. Now please listen to this wonderful doctor from the US, and we will continue our
ER and critical care doctor from New York City. 9 days ago, I opened an intensive care unit to care for the sickest COVID-positive patients in this city. In these 9 days, I have seen things I have never seen before. In treating these patients, I have witnessed medical phenomenon that just don't make sense in the context of treating a disease that is supposed to be a viral pneumonia. 9 days ago, I presumed I was opening an intensive care unit to treat patients with a virus causing a pneumonia that was ravaging lungs across the world, starting out as something mild, a cough, a sore throat, and progressively increasing in severity until ultimately ending in something called acute respiratory distress syndrome, or ARDS. This is the paradigm that every hospital in the country is working under. This is the disease, ARDS, that every hospital is preparing to treat. And this is the disease, ARDS, for which in the next 2 to 6 weeks, 100,000 Americans might be put on a ventilator. And yet, everything I've seen in the last 9 days, all the things that just don't make sense, the patients I'm seeing in front of me, the lungs I'm trying to improve, have led me to believe that COVID-19 is not this disease, and that we are operating under a medical paradigm that is untrue.
So with this previous video and also with many inputs coming in, we're able to understand that the real disease appears to cause oxygen deprivation in victims, and that oxygen deprivation is not because of pneumonia. Though the coronavirus is associated with a flu-like symptoms, but eventually it is not leading to pneumonia in most of the cases. Maybe it is a coexistent in certain number of cases, but majority of the experience is that the persons who are suffering from advanced stages of corona virus, that is a COVID-19 type infection, are actually suffering from oxygen deprivation. And in another one of the article, we are also getting the same inputs. And this hemoglobin molecule is the one which is responsible for transporting the oxygen to the peripheral tissues. And this hemoglobin molecule, if you remember a few slides back, we associated this with the planet Mars. Now again, just in the backdrop of this discussion, you should keep that in your mind. So in one of the articles, it's also clearly mentioned that COVID-19 had us all fooled, but now we might have finally found its secret. Now, the past 48 hours or so have seen a huge revelation. COVID-19 causes prolonged and progressive hypoxia, starving your body of oxygen by binding to the heme groups in hemoglobin in your red blood cells. People are simply desaturating, that is, losing oxygen in their blood, and that's what eventually leads to organ failures that kill them, not any form of ARDS or pneumonia. All the damage to the lungs you see in CT scans are from the release of oxidation ion from the hemes. This overwhelms the natural defenses against pulmonary oxidative stress and causes that nice always bilateral ground glass opacity in the lungs. Patients returning for rehospitalization days or weeks after recovery suffering from apparent delayed post-hypoxic leukoencephalopathy strengthen the notion COVID-19 patients are suffering from hypoxia despite no signs of respiratory tire out or fatigue. Now, though it started out as a respiratory illness, upper respiratory illness, and symptoms of sore throat and the typical flu-like symptoms, finally now the scientists have discovered that the problem could lie in the oxygenation of tissues block. So it's to do with hemoglobin. And when we are seeing the entire pandemic from a perspective of just a medical specialist who is zoomed in only to particular organ systems, we will fail to get the big picture. So here comes actually the true meaning of holistic knowledge as propounded by Ayurveda. In the real world, ancient world, it has always been known that a true Ayurvedic Vaidya is also a Jyotishi. And there are several facets to the treatment part, and So we have actually certain decorations bestowed on the traditional Vaidyas as Ashtavaidya. That is, they are the experts in 8 aspects of knowledge. So this is nothing new. In the modern world, maybe our approach to understanding the pandemic, it may appear new, but it's actually very basic entity, a very basic requirement that a doctor should be possessing, the knowledge of the entire cosmos, then how this interplays with the human physiology, and when you integrate all the knowledge, a meaningful solution comes, and in fact which can help very deeply and in a very cutting edge way the solution to such pandemic crisis. And it is not in just Vedic astrology, but also in the Western astrology. It's clearly related to the Mars is related to blood, and the Roman god of war, and all this is quite detailed in the various sources that you can trace out in the internet. Now, with all this knowledge that we have, one of the main interventional processes that we could apply to the present pandemic, and which sadly is not discussed much outside India, because in India we know this is a way of life and people are generally already practicing all these things in their daily life to a large extent. And also, if you can correlate with the developing picture in India, especially in Kerala, we find that the epidemic or the pandemic is well controlled, and many of the top people in India are really surprised at the way the results are pouring in from Kerala. So this could be due to the deep-seated knowledge that is prevalent in the masses about Ayurveda in Kerala, because we know that Kerala is a God's own country, which is actually living embodiment of this traditional sciences in a very authentic way. So even in the Western medicine, in fact, the view which I strictly adhere to is there is no such thing as a Western world or the Eastern world. In fact, all the traditions before the Industrial Revolution blossomed in the so-called Western countries. The traditions have always been the same. So anyway, the father of Western medicine, modern medicine, Hippocrates, has clearly declared that let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. So unfortunately, the Industrial Revolution has progressed so far that instead of the machines giving us time, giving us relief from monotony, has made us monotonous. That's a sad part, but anyway, it's the great time now where we have to be thankful to Corona, the Kram Chakra, the virus, in the name of Corona, for having us all back to the basics. So forgotten basics are going to be rewired now. So the father of Western medicine, Hippocrates, of course, born in 460 AD in ancient Greece, is often quoted as saying, "Let food be thy medicine." There are volumes of valid scientific, medical, peer-reviewed, unbiased, cutting-edge research studies as evidence demonstrating the healing power of food. Now, it's surprising that we are saying that such researches are necessary, because we can understand very easily that we are made of food, and definitely the knowledge of food has to be so well ingrained in the society to prevent diseases. And in fact, if the disease comes, the knowledge of food is the foremost weapon through which we can fight any disease state. So we need to understand why we are not talking about food as a first priority in any disease, leave alone corona pandemic. But now we are going to just see how we are going to resolve faster the corona pandemic with the knowledge of food. Scientists have found that the corona pandemic is less in those countries where malaria has been endemic. So there is something closely related between the malarial parasites or the malaria disease itself and the immune system's interactions, so that the corona COVID-19 virus is finding it difficult to lay its foot in the places where we have had malaria endemics. We can see how malaria has been clearly described in the ancient texts of Ayurveda in Sushruta Samhitas as Vishama Jwara, and there you can read that a tertiary type of fever and quaternary type of fever, quotidian fever has all been described, and it really matches with the malarial disease process. So we understand that mostly the jwaras are classified based on the doshas, and then eventually it's been said that the major cause of jwara is indigestion. So with the industrial revolution, people from different geographic locations have been exposed to, we can say, very exotic foods from different continents, and this all could have resulted in indigestion, and then thereby jwaras which we have probably focused microscopically into the cellular world and built our own story. So mosquito harms or mosquito helps now. With the corona pandemic, we are beginning to realize that mosquito will not be the villain that we always ascribe that to. Leech has been used to suck the poisonous blood out of the sick people, and in a similar way, without the leech, there are certain techniques where the bad blood is cupped up. It's called bloodletting. So it's popular in the Arabic world, cupping. So there is something you need to think. Whatever creation that has been made in the world has always served for the purpose of humans, or at least humans understood to utilize it. So everything is so well planned. Now the COVID-19 brought out that the malarial disease has in fact helped the humans combat other types of infections, and our immunity developed because of malaria. And we see today that many countries where malaria has not been a major problem